planned everything, but I never thought I wouldn't get to go. If someone told you that planning a trip could make you lose faith in your own family, would you believe them? I used to think that, with enough love and effort, everything would be rewarded. But then, a short conversation, a suitcase that wasn't mine, and a smile that came at the wrong time, changed everything. There are dreams you quietly nurture, working hard day by day to make them come true, until someone else walks in and takes them, like they were always more deserving. That's exactly what happened to me, on what seemed like just another ordinary May morning. My name is Amelia, I'm 27 years old and I work in marketing in Seattle. After 3 years of saving every penny, taking on weekend jobs and cutting every unnecessary expense, I had planned a special gift, a 10-day trip to Europe for my parents, who had never left the United States. I thought, after all the years they sacrificed for our family, it was time they deserved a real experience. And I wanted to be the one to go with them, to share every moment, every glass of Italian wine, and every cobbled street in France. Jones. I remember the day I received the final confirmation email from the travel company. Round-trip business class tickets from Seattle to Paris. A boutique hotel in the Marais district, right in the city center. A wine tour in Tuscany. A detailed itinerary. Meals, tours, activities. All compiled into a small, color-printed, leather-bound notebook tied with a red ribbon. A birthday gift for my mom. Before she turned 60. I imagined handing that notebook to her. I thought she'd tear up from joy. I pictured my dad smiling warmly, patting my shoulder and saying, "My daughter is amazing." I imagined us taking pictures at the Eiffel Tower, filming my parents tasting French cheese for the first time and laughing together when we inevitably got lost in a tiny Italian market. That entire spring, I didn't buy a single thing for myself. I turned down every social outing just to save money. I even picked up extra freelance design work, working past 2 a.m. most weekends just to afford hotel upgrades so my parents could have the best experience. I didn't tell them right away. I wanted it to be a surprise. A true joy after so many years of their routine life and short trips close to home. 1 week before the flight, I finally told them. I printed the tickets, packed a suitcase for my mom, reminded my dad to get his passport, and booked a private car to take us to the airport at 6 a.m. Everything was ready. I even bought 3 matching navy mule suitcases, each with a leather name tag embossed with the words, "The Parkers, Europe Trip." There were exactly 7 days left before we were set to leave. I was counting down the hours. What I didn't know was, I could plan the perfect journey, but I couldn't control what would happen next. 6 a.m. I parked my car in front of my parents' house in the North Gate area, the engine still gently humming. The dim early morning light filtered through the windshield, casting a cold gray glow. Almost perfectly matching my mood, nervous, but excited. My mom was the first to step out, pulling the navy suitcase I had packed for her. I glanced at the clock on the dashboard, 6:02, 2 minutes late. "You're late," she said, half teasing, half scolding, though she didn't seem genuinely upset. "We still have a whole hour to get to the airport, Mom," I smiled, stepping out to open the trunk. But then I froze. The second person walking out wasn't my dad. It was Emily, my younger sister, 24, recently unemployed, still living at home. She was pulling a suitcase too, baggy gray hoodie, messy bun, one earbud in. She didn't look at me, just gave a smirk, half smug, half defiant. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why is Emily bringing luggage?" My mom turned around, a strangely cheerful smile on her face. "Oh, your dad and I decided, Emily will go instead of you. She really needs a break. You're always so busy, you can go next time." I stood there, frozen. What? I planned this whole trip. I spent 3 years organizing and paying for everything. "And we're grateful for that," Mom said, patting my shoulder like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "But Emily just went through a breakup. She's been so down. She could really use a change of scenery. You understand, don't you?" Emily finally spoke. Thanks for understanding. Paris sounds amazing, she grinned. That smile chilled my blood. Then Dad walked out. He didn't look at me, just handed me a suitcase. Not mine. His. This is unbelievable. I stepped back, heart pounding in my chest. This trip was for me, to share with you. I did this for the family. For you too. It's still a family trip, Mom said as she lifted Emily's suitcase into the trunk. Just without you this time. Don't make a big deal out of it, Amelia. We know how busy you are. We figured you'd understand. Understand? How was I supposed to understand being shoved aside like my effort meant nothing? My lips trembled, but I held back the tears. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced a smile. Fine, I said, voice stiff. If that's what you've decided, then go. I opened the trunk and loaded their bags myself. Each movement felt like a knife digging deeper, but I wouldn't let them see me break. The drive to the airport was nearly silent. Only Emily talked, non-stop, about TikTok, about bakeries in Paris, whether she should buy French perfume as a gift. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My parents said almost nothing. Maybe they thought silence would somehow erase the guilt. When we got there, I pulled up to the international terminal. I helped unload their bags. Mom gave me a hug, like nothing had just happened. Thank you for understanding, Amelia. You're such a good daughter. Emily winked. Thanks for the amazing gift, sis. I nodded, said nothing, and when they turned to walk into the terminal, I stood there. The cold morning wind slipped through my coat collar, bringing with it an emptiness I couldn't shake. In that moment, I realized something. To them, Emily would always come first, and I'd always be the support in the background. But maybe, just maybe, this time, I wouldn't stay silent. I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcast, not a single sound, except for the low hum of the engine, blending with the screaming thoughts in my head. I thought I would cry, but I didn't. My eyes were dry. There was only a cold, hollow tightness in my chest, like every cell in my body was freezing over. When I got home, I didn't go inside right away. I sat behind the wheel, staring at the garage door for a long time. I thought about all the sleepless nights I stayed up working late, all the times I turned down outings, even the little things I denied myself just to save a bit more. All so my parents could have the trip of a lifetime. And then, without warning, I was pushed aside like I didn't matter. I gave a dry laugh, not one of amusement, then I went inside. I didn't change clothes, didn't eat. I opened my laptop and pulled up the reservation list. The confirmation emails were all there, the hotel in Paris, the wine tour in Italy, the high-speed train to Switzerland, every detail I had carefully planned over the past year. I moved the cursor to the cancel reservation button in the first hotel email. My hand paused for a second, then I clicked. One by one, each service, each itinerary, each pre-booked dinner. I canceled them all. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. I just felt justified. If they decided to erase me from the trip, then they didn't deserve to enjoy what I'd built. They couldn't keep putting their happiness on my shoulders forever. When I canceled the final booking, I leaned back in my chair, feeling a strange lightness in my body. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my own life. 2 hours later, my phone started buzzing. Mom, then Emily, then Dad. I didn't answer. The messages came pouring in like a thunderstorm. Amelia, what's going on? The hotel won't check us in. What did you do? Call us back. This isn't funny. I read each text with a calm detachment. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt dumb. When the 12th call came through, this time from Emily, I let it ring. A few moments later, she left a voicemail. You're being really immature, you know. We're stuck at the airport. You can't just do this. Call us back. I deleted it without listening to the rest. I used to be the fixer, the one who gave in. When they forgot my birthday, when Emily borrowed money and never paid me back, when Mom and Dad said, "You understand," You're the strong one. I'd understood enough. Understood that if I didn't stand up for myself, no one else would. When I finally picked up a call from Mom, her voice came through the line almost in a scream. Amelia, how could you do this? We're stranded in Paris. No hotel, no itinerary. You have to call the hotel right now. I cut her off, my tone unusually calm. I canceled everything, because it was my trip and you chose to replace me with Emily. Silence. Then, softly, she whispered, "You're being so selfish." I closed my eyes, smiled faintly. No, Mom, I'm learning to love myself, and the first thing I've learned is that no one gets to take advantage of me anymore. I hung up. No regret. No turning back. Not this time. They called me non-stop for the next 3 days. My mom was furious, switching between blaming and begging. Emily was sulky and full of accusations. My dad stayed mostly silent, only sending a few short messages like, "We need to talk," or "You should reconsider." I didn't respond. I spent those days cleaning the house, tending to my plants and rereading the book I had abandoned last summer. I opened the windows, letting light flood the space, and the wind carry away the heaviness in my thoughts. For the first time in years, I felt peace. No longer the one expected to hold everything together. On the 4th day, the doorbell rang. I stepped out, not needing to check the peephole to know who it was. My mom, dad, and Emily were standing at my door. My mom's face was flushed red, her eyes bouncing between anger and disappointment. Dad stood behind her, looking tired. Emily crossed her arms, her expression smug, like I was the one who'd ruined everything. I opened the door without a word. "Amelia," my mom started, her voice tight like a stretched wire. "We need to talk." "All right." I stepped aside to let them in. They sat on the couch while I stood at the kitchen counter, keeping just enough distance not to feel emotionally cornered. "You did something completely unacceptable," my mom said. "You ruined the trip. You canceled everything. You left us stranded like homeless people. Do you have any idea how ashamed you made us feel?" "Ashamed that I stopped letting people walk all over me?" I asked, calmly. Emily let out a mocking laugh. "Oh, please. You think you're the victim? I just went instead of you. What's the big deal?" I turned and looked her straight in the eye. "I didn't just plan that trip, Emily. I worked hard, sacrificed, saved every dollar, while you lived carefree and contributed nothing. And then I got replaced at the last minute, like I didn't even exist. No, I don't think I'm the victim. But I'm definitely not going to be the quiet martyr anymore." Dad cleared his throat. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We just thought Emily needed it more." "Then why didn't you talk to me first?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "Why make that decision behind my back? If I wasn't important enough to be included, then you shouldn't have felt entitled to what I created." My mom looked around the room like she was searching for something to anchor herself. "Amelia, we're family. Families are supposed to forgive. We don't punish each other like this." I took a deep breath. My heart wasn't racing like before. Exactly because we're family, it hurts even more. I've been the one expected to understand, to step aside, while Emily always gets priority. I've stayed silent long enough. But silence doesn't mean agreement, and this time, I'm choosing to say no. Emily scowled. "You're tearing this family apart." I nodded. If family means I have to ignore my own feelings so everyone else can be happy, then maybe it does need to be torn down and rebuilt the right way. The room went completely silent. I let them sit with that for a moment, then said, softly but firmly, "From now on, if you want to contact me, start with respect, not expectations. I'm no longer the one cleaning up everyone's messes." My parents stood up. My mom looked like she wanted to say something but stopped herself. Emily didn't look at me, just walked out with one last glare. I walked them to the gate. No hugs, no promises, no pretending everything was fine. When the door closed behind them, I made myself a cup of tea and sat on the chair by the window, looking out at the small garden. A feeling of lightness slowly filled my chest, not because I had won, but because I had protected myself. For the first time, I didn't rush back to fix everything. I drew a line, and I stood firm. After that confrontation, my phone went completely silent. No more late-night calls, no more angry messages, no more unexpected knocks at the door. At first, the silence confused me. It felt like I had just walked off a stage after years of performing in a play, and suddenly the lights went out, and no one had a role for me anymore. But as the days passed, I began to realize it wasn't emptiness. It was space. Space to breathe. Space to listen to myself. I started rearranging the living room, the old items from my parents' house, the sofa they gave me, the painting Emily made in college. I carefully packed them up and gave them away. I replaced them with a caramel-colored leather chair and a sunflower painting I chose, simply because it made me smile every time I looked at it. Each small change was a way of telling myself, I deserve to live in a space that belongs to me. I also returned to things I'd put off. I enrolled in a photography class every Tuesday night. I spent Sunday afternoons strolling through the farmer's market, trying dishes I'd never tasted, chatting with strangers, buying flowers to fill my kitchen. I bought a new journal, one with a soft leather cover and thick paper. Every morning I wrote a few lines, not to complain or vent, but to understand myself better. I wrote about what made me feel grateful, what made me smile, and the things I was learning to let go of. One afternoon, while sitting at my usual cafe, sunlight poured through the window, catching specks of dust in the air. I looked out onto the street, where cars passed non-stop, and suddenly thought, this is my life, and I'm no longer living it to please anyone else. I know there will be moments of loneliness, times when I miss family dinners, Christmas mornings together, when I'll wonder if I was too harsh. But I also know healing doesn't mean returning to where you were hurt. It means learning to move forward, even when your heart still carries scars. 3 weeks after the trip that wasn't mine, I opened the laptop I had once used to plan every detail. Instead of regret, I felt a new sense of excitement. I started researching places fit for solo travelers. No rigid itinerary. No emotional negotiation. Just me and the experiences I wanted for myself. I wrote in my journal, October, Florence, Italy. Eat gelato every day. Watch the sunset over the Arno River. Ask no one for permission. That trip wasn't meant to prove anything to anyone. It was my way of saying to myself, I deserve to enjoy life. Not to repay anyone. Not to make anyone proud. Simply because I exist. The day I booked the ticket to Florence, it was drizzling. I sat in my kitchen, hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea, the words, booking confirmed, glowing on my laptop screen. My heart pounded, not from nerves, but from something far stranger. Freedom. I had never traveled alone before. In the past, every trip had come with responsibilities, taking care of others, planning everything, making sure everyone was happy. But this time no one was waiting for me at the train station. No one was asking, what do you want to eat? Or, when are we going back to the hotel? It was just me, and days that moved at my own rhythm. I arrived in Florence on a late autumn afternoon, the air crisp and the cobblestone streets covered in golden leaves. The ancient city welcomed me with the smell of toasted bread from a tiny corner bakery, the sound of a violin floating from a third-floor balcony, and the warm smile of the innkeeper as she handed me my room key. My room was on the second floor, with a window overlooking mossy red rooftops and a distant bell tower. I didn't turn on the TV. I just sat by the window, watching the sun slip behind the houses, my heart as light as a drifting cloud. On my first day, I followed no itinerary. I wandered through alleyways that sparked my curiosity, paused at handmade craft shops, tasted biscotti from a cafe I'd never heard of. My Italian was broken, but the locals didn't mind. They smiled, pointed, gestured, even wrote dish names on paper for me. By noon, I was eating pasta under an olive tree in a small square, listening to the murmur of local chatter and feeling like I was part of the painting. No rush, no pressure. I began writing in my travel journal, not to share, but to capture every moment I truly felt alive. Today I bought a hand-painted postcard at the flea market. The vendor, an old man with white hair, spoke broken English. He told me that if I still write letters by hand, that person must be very special. I took the postcard home but didn't write to anyone. I kept it. As a reminder, I'm that special person too. Over the next few days I visited the Uffizi Gallery, climbed to the top of the Duomo, and bought an old Italian book from a street-side shop. In the evenings I dined alone by the Arno River. Awkward at first, then comforting. Sometimes with a book, sometimes just watching people pass by, listening to a city that asked nothing of me but to simply be. One night, I sat on the stone steps of a plaza, gelato in hand, as a street band played a classical piece with a jazz twist. A group of tourists danced, others clapped, children ran in circles. I laughed out loud when a small dog collapsed at my feet, tongue out, exhausted from chasing nothing. In that moment I realized I was happy. I didn't need anyone next to me to feel complete. I didn't need praise or recognition. I just needed to be myself, in a moment no longer bound by the past. Before leaving Florence, I went back to the postcard shop and bought another one. This time, I knew exactly who I would write to. Not my family, not out of blame. I wrote to myself. Thank you for being brave enough to leave. Thank you for choosing yourself. The journey has only just begun. When I returned from Florence, Seattle greeted me with its signature gray skies and a light mist. I wheeled my suitcase through the front door, stepping into my little house with a weightless heart. No one waiting at the door, no welcome signs or pressing questions, just the familiar scent of old wood, the ticking of a steady clock, and a strange quiet peace. I placed the lavender I brought back from Italy into a glass jar on the kitchen table, boiled water for tea, and turned on a soft classical playlist. Every movement was slow, intentional, like the pace I had learned from Florence's cobbled streets. Then the phone rang. My mom's name flashed on the screen. My chest no longer tightened like it used to. I let it ring once, twice. On the third, I picked up. Amelia, her voice was gentler than usual. You're back? Landed this morning, I said, keeping my tone neutral. I tried calling a few times. You didn't pick up. I said nothing. I didn't need to explain my silence anymore. Silence was its own answer. She sighed. I want to apologize. My eyebrows lifted slightly, but I stayed quiet. I know I was wrong for choosing Emily over you. I thought, like always, you'd understand. But I relied on that too much. You planned everything for that trip, and I didn't respect that. I'm sorry. For the first time in many years, I heard that word from my mother. Not deflection, not justification, just an apology. Thank you for saying that, I replied calmly. But you know things can't go back to the way they were, right? Yes, she answered, a bit hesitant. I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. Just hoping. You know your father and I are trying to change. I looked out the window. The rain had started to fall harder. You know, Mom, on that trip I realized something. I've spent too long trying to please everyone. And I'm tired. Amelia, she whispered. I know. And I'm sorry I made you carry all of that. I don't blame you anymore, I said gently. But I can't go back to being the old Amelia, the one who stays quiet, who always sacrifices. If this family wants to keep me, it has to start with respect, not vague responsibility, not emotional guilt. The other end of the line fell silent. Then Mom said, I understand. And I'm ready. A week later, Emily called me. Her first message didn't begin with blame. It read, Can we talk? I want to apologize. We met at a cafe near the park. Emily sat across from me, no makeup, no attitude, a hint of vulnerability in her eyes. You have every right to be angry, she said, and I was wrong. I thought that trip was a chance for me. I forgot it was a dream you built for years. I didn't need to hear more. A real apology doesn't need to be long, just honest, and with a willingness to change. We talked for a while longer, not as family members once fractured, but as two women learning to understand each other again. That evening, I sat on my porch with a glass of red wine, soft yellow light glowing from the living room behind me. I knew things wouldn't be perfect right away, but I also knew I was different now. I was no longer the girl who stayed silent to keep the peace. I was a woman who knew her worth, who knew where the lines were drawn, what to hold on to and what to let go. I used to think that forgiveness meant accepting everything, even the pain I had endured, but now I understand. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about not letting the past control the present. My family has started to change. They no longer call me at midnight just to ask for favors. They no longer assume I'll say yes to everything. They listen more, and more importantly, they ask if I'm okay instead of assuming I am. I'm not sure how long this will last, or how much they'll really change, but for me, it's enough to start over. Not from where things left off, but from where I choose. I'm continuing my photography class. On weekends I join a small hiking group, and I'm learning to cook Italian dishes, a way to keep a little taste of Florence in my Seattle kitchen. One early winter morning I stood in front of the mirror, a wool scarf draped loosely around my neck, ready to head out. I looked at myself and smiled, not because it was a special day, but because I felt enough. Not for anyone, not to impress anyone. Just me, and for me that was enough. The road ahead is still long, and there will definitely be detours, and days when my heart feels heavy, but now, I'm no longer walking to earn validation. I'm walking because I want to live authentically, not pretending, not shrinking, not performing for anyone else. That trip, which once felt like a loss, turned out to be a turning point that changed my life completely, and I know now, in a world full of noise, choosing silence to hear yourself is the bravest thing I've ever done. Amelia's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes it's the people we love the most who hurt us the deepest. But instead of endlessly enduring and sacrificing in silence, we have the right to stand up, set boundaries, and choose a life that honors who we truly are. Healing isn't forgetting. It's learning to love yourself enough to move forward, even without anyone's approval. In real life, anyone can be Amelia, if you're brave enough to choose what you truly deserve. What do you think about Amelia's decision? Would you do the same if you were in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heart-touching stories about life and family.